How can you manage a midterm rental from anywhere in the world? This is what we are going to be discussing today with Jamie Banks. I originally met Jamie at the midterm rental conference when we shared a room at the hotel together, and she was honestly the best roommate because she just took me under her wing, and she is amazing, as you're going to see, and she's such a great educator. So if you have any questions, make sure to ask, and here she is. I'm going to add her on right now. All right, I sent you the request. Hello.
Hey Miranda, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well.
Good. Well, so I know it zooms in so much when we actually start the live, so I always have to adjust to my screen here. Hold on.
Yeah,
There we go. But thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have you here. I was just saying how we originally met at the midterm rental conference and how you were the best roommate.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been I guess almost a year now. I know we originally met like in the out-of-state investor community and had mutual friends. So
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for
And
having me on
and
today.
it's been so cool to see like how much you've thrived and really embraced like the educator standpoint. So I was just telling them too, if anyone has any questions, just drop them in the chat and we'll get to them. Don't wait till the end. But did you want, let's, as we get started, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and what your portfolio looks like today?
Sure, sure. So I actually started in real estate as what I like to call job hacking. So I worked in the commercial real estate space for about 5 years, and that's how I started learning real estate. I jumped in and started investing myself last year in January of 2023. Bought my first investment property and then just kind of got an arbitrage and kind of went full force. Um, Today, I'm a full time investor and then also an entrepreneur. I have four properties. I self manage my properties and then I also offer services for other investors.
That's incredible. And you said all of that within how many years?
A year and a half.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And have all of the properties that you bought been remotely, or do you just manage them remotely now?
Yes, that's funny. So my first property that I ever bought was my primary residence,
Mhm.
and my husband and I just last week moved out of it and made it our fourth official rental. Before that, we were house hacking it, so managing it, a lot differently managing it while inside of it, and so but now, yes, all of them we're managing remotely.
Okay.
Well, I'm managing remotely. I like to say we, but it's just me and
Oh
my
my
VA.
God. That is incredible. Okay, so I guess, well, really quick before we start, I feel like I can only see half of you. Are you able
Okay.
to adjust your screen a little bit?
Yeah, hold on, let me put it down. I just moved, so I'm in.
Because I'm
I
seeing the
have like
text.
makeshift. Hold on. I have a makeshift station. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, let me
But hey, that's
move
how
it
I
now.
started this whole thing. I just stack books on each other. And
Yep, exactly. Actually, I stacked it on top of my degree, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Okay. Is this
Okay.
better?
Yeah, I can see more of you. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
So I guess so can you take us from the property where that wasn't your primary? How did you find it and kind of how did you get started? Because how do you know if a property is even a good fit for a midterm rental if you can't visit in person?
Sure. So definitely doing a lot of relying on your vendors and agents. So I found the first one, actually three of the four properties that I own, I found just on the MLS using a realtor, an investor friendly realtor, someone who definitely has more of an investor standpoint and they've
Mhm.
all been investors themselves. And so working with them, just getting a lot of pictures, videos. Also, especially as I've started investing more, I've just basically hired someone sometimes as a college student to kind of go behind
Mhm.
them. And sometimes it's just doing a sweep. Like I invest in, I have a property in Philadelphia, which anyone who's been to Philly knows is very neighborhood specific, street dependent, and you definitely want to, make sure that the street and streets are safe. So I'll just have someone like a college student kind of walk the blocks, especially walk them, after dark, just to make sure they feel safe before I, take the plunge with that investment.
Awesome. And so you relied on her. So did you say you walked the property or you had them walk the property?
No, I had them walk the
Okay.
property. So primarily, I'm not walking the property until after I close. That the first one I was able to walk basically the morning I closed. So at that point, it's not much you can do. Um, so yeah, just for relying a lot on photos and vendors, and I think
Wow.
having different vendors who are connected to each other.
Hmm.
So let's say I use one inspection company, and then I would use an agent, then I would use another, maybe a handyman or again a college student recommendation for another eyes. And it's like if I'm getting the same kind of feedback and opinions from everyone, I can rely on it. But then if it's something like,
Okay.
hey, someone says I don't feel safe, or hey, I don't think this would be good because XYZ,
Yeah.
I can, dig in a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. And did you, I guess, encounter any red flags? Like, did they come back and say on any properties that led up to this property, or did you get pretty lucky and just found like a good one right off the bat?
No, I definitely had some like one, my agent went and the lockbox had been broken into. And then there was a window busted and he's like, okay, this obviously isn't a good neighborhood.
Mhm.
I'm not going in there, so I don't suggest you buy here. And so we had a few of those, and
Okay.
we had some where it just didn't make sense, like numbers
Hmm.
wise. So I looked, I would say, for about 2 months actively and looked,
Okay.
well, he looked right at a few,
Hmm.
but it did come, fairly quickly because I knew exactly like what the kind of property I wanted.
Okay. And would you recommend a certain level of rehab for investors when they are doing all of this remotely, or do you think they can do any level of rehab as long as they have certain members of their team in place?
I'm biased because I've done essentially no rehab and I've bought turnkey.
Mm.
That is something that I'm looking to change. I'm looking into more renovations, but I really think like whatever you're most comfortable with.
Okay.
I've kind of used kind of seasonality to kind of get lower prices. So like right now I'm actively making offers in Indiana, which is very cold. And I think last time I looked it was 10 degrees.
Mhm.
And so traditional homeowners do not want to move, do not want to buy. Even I might not get a tenant for a while, but I know I can get a significant discount on something, fairly ready, might need, a fresh coat of paint or something. But that's how I've bought, and I've also bought like creatively. But I've bought fairly turnkey. But I do believe like once you have your vendors in
Mhm.
place, the problem is with any vendor from a contractor to a cleaner, you're going to go through I think a few vendors before you find the right one. And so that is can kind of be nerve wracking when you're going in and having a rehab where you're like your hope is the right one. You find recommendations, but I've even seen recommendations where they did amazing on a friend's project, but then on mine, maybe they didn't do as well.
Mhm.
And so I do like, with having rentals and having just small projects done at a time, I can kind of test out vendors for the time when I'm, going to do rehabs. I've already kind of tested out certain vendors.
I love that. I love that you had it in mind, so you've been planning for it, even though you weren't actively doing it. You're still now you have it in place, which is gonna be amazing. And I feel like it's gonna make it a lot easier for you when you actually start doing, those gut rehabs. Is that what you're gonna go for? A gut rehab?
Yeah,
Uh,
fingers crossed. We'll see.
oh my
We'll definitely
gosh.
see. I would say there isn't a lot of in the market I'm buying in, there isn't too many investors. And so a lot of things are just more so dated. Just,
Okay.
people haven't updated their house. And so it's
Yeah.
been mostly heavy cosmetic. But if
Okay.
the right property comes up, definitely will.
Yeah. So I mean, can I ask, because I feel like with a turnkey, it probably is, it's obviously it's not going to take as much time to set up a turnkey than it is a gut rehab. So why, if you have the systems and processes in place to be able to take on these turnkey midterm rentals, why go the extra route and learn like how to do a gut rehab?
Sure. So I think one, some advice from friends and being able to move private money quicker. So I'm scaling my portfolio by raising private money.
Hmm.
And typically my structure has been raising private money for 3 to 5 year timelines because I don't have a heavy value add where I can pull out that money. I'm relying on cash flow
Hmm.
and maybe, some renovations that I'm doing later on before I sell or refinance the property. Where if I was doing a rehab and I have private money lenders, most one are looking for shorter term positions under 12 months, especially the first time they work with you. And
Mhm.
then two, if I could move the money, meaning buy something, renovate it, refinance into, or, into a more stable product. I don't really plan to flip unless, need be. Then I could return their capital quicker than use the capital for to get into the next rental. So I
Okay,
think just more so being able to move into properties a little quicker.
got it. Okay. And then we do have a question. Bree asks, can you talk more about what you mean about acquiring creatively?
Sure, yeah. So I bought a property last year. Um, Creatively, that was, I bought it subject to, and also there was a seller finance component. And so this one came from a mentor of mine who was friends with the seller. And essentially, he bought it as a short-term rental, in a market where short-term rentals are heavily regulated. You can only rent short-term and get a license if it's owner occupied. So it has to be, basically essentially a house hack. It was already furnished for short-term rental, not too well, but excuse me, it didn't require, excuse me, as much furniture. And so we bought it subject to the existing loan. It was like 3.75%, and then brought down only about 20,000. And then the
Mhm.
seller was willing to finance 45,000 basically between the purchase price and what we already had in at 0% interest for 5 years. So that's
That's
what we
incredible.
have. It's a property in New Orleans that I bought, and it's currently a midterm rental.
Awesome. That's incredible. Wow. That rate you said was a 3.75.
3.75.
Okay. Wow. And all from connections from, you said, from another investor, right?
Yeah, another investor that I
Wow.
met at my first real estate meetup.
Power of networking right there. That's incredible. And great question, Bree. And so I guess as you got started and you started acquiring more properties, when did you start implementing these systems and processes to make them go more smoothly, or did you always just get them in place from the very beginning?
Oh no, I wish I could say they were in place from the beginning. I think like you live and you learn. Like the property in New Orleans, I didn't do as much diligence on the neighborhood as I would say I should have, and learned some things after closing, which after you own the property, is something you can do about the location. And so that's why now, like in my next acquisition, I spend a lot more time doing research on the neighborhood, hiring different vendors and the things that I have in place now. And so I definitely think like while I've always been systemized and really like SOPs, and really believe in like systemizing, optimizing, that's part of what I did in my past life in commercial real estate. The actual how of whatever that process is has definitely changed a lot over the past few years, well, the past year and a half.
Okay. And can you elaborate a little bit on how?
Sure. So, like, I would say, like, the neighborhood, like, search or what I do now, I've actually started, like, flying out. My latest acquisition, I flew out for closing. One, partially I had to. There were some issues with finding a title company because I decided to go to Mexico right before closing, which um, pushed things back a little bit. But also I was able to like interview the cleaners at the property, and I just had cleaners kind of going back to back to back. I was like, hey, it was funny. I was checking my clock and like making sure I hope the other one doesn't see the other one. And I interviewed them on site and just said, hey, like, how much would it be? What are you thinking? I wanted to understand their level of detail for like a deep clean. I think
Hmm.
especially buying like older homes and then buying homes that are going to be midterms where like my clientele for that particular property is um, work crews. So construction crews who are typically men who are typically, traveling in large crews and typically aren't cleaning as much. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to know what is their process for a deep clean? How much is a deep clean?
Yeah.
Also, like what type of cleans would they offer while guests are there? Because not all cleaners, especially in the short and midterm space, will offer like cleans, as we're there. Like some properties I have to have like a cleaner, more of like a regular house cleaner,
Hmm.
kind of come. And so it's definitely, I think I've definitely refined my process on finding vendors because anyone knows in the short and midterm space, finding a reliable cleaner is the hardest
Yeah.
part.
I've heard that 100%. I was just on an accountability call. We were literally just talking about her finding a new cleaner because, she thought she knew how much work it was going to be and then ended up being too much and then they just drop or they're not meeting your expectations. There's so many different things. So I guess how did you choose yours? Like what was that defining factor that made you think, okay, this is the one for me?
I think one of like what she was able to do, so she's actually she used to work for a property management company. And so she knows property management. She's also a handy woman. She's my
Mhm.
handy woman. And so having kind of a dual action was really good as well. Meaning if she comes over and something's broken, she can fix it. Which
Um,
sounds funny, but being an out of state operator, usually any small thing, besides once a handyman's already there, obviously, a woman, they'll do everything. But I usually have to pay different amounts of money for different vendors. And
okay.
so having someone who can come over and, hey, this is broken, I can do it. Or I remember she mowed my lawn. I was like, you mowed my lawn? I wouldn't do that.
Oh my
I would
gosh.
not, because I was like, because she was helping me find a vendor. She was like, I'll just mow it. I'll borrow a mower and I'm going to mow the lawn. And I'm like, that's great. So having someone who's willing to do the smaller things, obviously they're being compensated for those things. But just, finding an all in one person was great. I think especially too, like what her process was,
Yeah.
because I realized having one midterm rental in one market, I might not be that busy, and I'll give them like maybe one job per month.
Yeah.
And so I want to like basically make sure that their process already aligns with my process. Like I don't want to reteach them a whole process.
Mhm.
It sounds good and I've tried, but they're going to revert back to a different process. Maybe someone else from their team comes and they just revert back to whatever their standard process is. So really just making sure that I aligned with someone who had a current process. And
Mhm.
also another thing is having a team. Like if you're sick, if your kids are sick, I don't want my whole operation to be down.
Right.
You have to have someone else on the team
Mhm.
who, you've already designated, who you've already trained, who can come and cover your jobs if, you're not available.
Okay, I love that, and that's a really great question to ask to a cleaner. If any, for those listening, how many people are on your team? But also, so I guess you focus on more of how many people they have on their team versus. Do you ever look at how many like projects or houses they're already cleaning? Like how full is their plate, or do you not even look at that and only focus on how many members of the team?
Honestly, I haven't, but especially because
Mhm.
I'm solely doing
Yeah.
midterms. So they could be really, really busy, but because my property is once a month,
Right.
as long as they have the capacity.
Yeah.
I do also want to know kind of the direction they're going. Like I love working with other entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
So like the cleaner I ended up going with, she's like a new business, she's growing. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm a new business and I'm growing as well. So we can grow together. And so I think for me, it's more about like, having the capacity, doing what they say they're going to do. Like, even for me, like arriving on time, if you say you're going to arrive at checkout time at 11, I want you to be there at 11.
Yeah.
11:02 is the latest, is acceptable, but if you come at 11:15, we have cameras, so I check that because
Yeah.
that's one thing. Is like I need to be able to rely on you to be at the place. If you're 15 minutes late and you let me know, that's I've been 15 minutes late. I think we all
Yeah.
have, but I think just reliability and stuff is so important. That's another thing that I was checking too when I was
Mhm.
doing my in and out interviews.
And I'm glad that you said you follow up on them by checking on them. So how long do you do that for? Like, do you give them about 30 days or do you just do random checks throughout the months afterwards?
I would say I say I check pretty consistently because I've had reservations that haven't people haven't stayed because of bad turnover, especially early on. And so I know like the importance of it. And so I definitely like I give a warning. It's not like, hey, you didn't do what you said you were gonna do or you were late. But it's just, I'll bring things to their attention. We'll talk about them. I like to debrief too, because they're doing videos for me regarding damage.
Mm-hmm.
If hopefully there's no damage, but sometimes, oh, if this chair doesn't work, this you didn't go through. I use damage protection policies as well as collect a security deposit, and so it's really important that we're really detailed. So I just usually, bring things up when we're already having our debrief conversation after they do the clean.
Okay. Could you actually explain a little bit more about the damage policies, which ones you use?
Sure. So Furnish Finder just rolled out a damage protection policy. I believe it's in conjunction with WAVO. And essentially it's a set fee. I know it's $79 for the max policy per month.
Okay.
And you get up to $3,500. There's some lower tiered policies as well. I believe it's like $10 less for maybe $1,000 less per month in coverage. But essentially, what those policies are for is they're for, I would say they can be addition to the security deposit, or they can replace the security
Okay.
deposit. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable not having any security deposit, and I don't let the tenants know that I get the damage protection policy. But that's because like tenants might drop a plate. I don't really want to charge someone for dropping a plate, right? But like a damage protection policy I'm paying for, better believe I don't mind charging that policy for a drop plate. Or like I have a tenant there. He's been there. He's going to be there 13 months based on his current lease, and there's still an option that he might extend. And so I'm like, with that long, I mean, I'll probably have to get all new sheets. Like the couch probably needs to be replaced because I got a really cheap couch when I first started. So certain things like that, a damage protection policy will give me additional damage protection. And then with their policy, there's also coverage for lost rent. And so because I'm primarily renting to like workers who, they have a contract at X place for X time. Like I have some work crews that I'm running to in the for my Indiana property. And so if something were to happen and things were to cancel, the damage protection policy will also give you loss of rent coverage. And that's what's up to 3,500. And then if you're okay with less coverage, it gives you like the lower tiers. So that's
Okay.
just something now that I incorporate in my operations costs. And I think it's really important because best case scenario, I've had a scenario where it was a corporate client. I got money back from the security deposit from the damage and money back from the damage protection policy. Ended up making money on the damage. I didn't plan to, but hey, I won't, say I didn't like it, right?
Yeah.
So, that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, at least you break even on because there's certain things that are going to happen. There's turnover. There's new sheets. There's people are going to break things, especially if you have pets or children.
Yeah.
And so I think the damage protection just kind of gives me the additional security.
Okay. And we do have some questions here. Oh, speaking of pets, Taco. So Taco made an appearance. Oh, there she is. Okay, so Christina asked, she actually asked a question about Monday. She says, you're a rock star with Monday.com, and she was wondering if you can show what Monday can do for entrepreneurs' business. Can you create fillable forms on Monday and save it there when complete? And yes, we actually are going to dive into Monday.com there. Before we actually get into that question, I do have two questions kind of going over the topic we were just talking about. One is, what security cameras and systems do you use? And then, do you have a remote door lock that you would recommend?
So I'm gonna do the door lock question first. I use the Schlade Encode. Can't say that I love it because I have one in my New Orleans property that like it gives me so much trouble. It was even giving me trouble when the property was vacant, which I'm like, literally no one's using it. So there's not a perfect one. That's the one I like the best. The reason because it actually syncs directly with Airbnb. And right now, like with my current capital stack, like I'm using Monday essentially as a replacement for another channel manager. And so a lot of the locks only connect with certain channel managers like Hospitable, Onerous, to name a few, um, which then link to Airbnb or wherever you're listing. Because I'm linking directly to Monday, I have to make sure that there is an app that will sync directly with um, Airbnb, which is basically the main like platform that we're getting leads from. Um, I have Blink and Ring for my security cameras. Just one, I've tested out both, and one I just had Ring at my primary home that I left that and changed into an MTR. So I have a little bit of both. I think there's different things I like. Like Ring is easier to share. Like if I just wanted to share, or I had someone who just wanted, to be able to review the footage of their home, they're able to do that. Where Blink, because I have multiple properties, if I shared, they would see all the properties, which obviously I don't want them to see. So I think that can be key differences. I would just recommend like choosing one and then going with one. Because I think the best thing and like one thing that I've really tried to do, especially as people have turned over and as I've really tried to simplify things better, is like just having one. Like we have the Schlade encode. Like while I don't love it, it's like I guess a toxic relationship. I don't love it, but I have it in each of my properties because then I can train my virtual assistant on that app. She knows how to use it. It's easy for her to add more properties. It's just adding an additional account on
Mhm.
there, and then also just like the ease of everything. And then we also like have the same team codes because our properties are so far apart. The likelihood of someone leaving like Indiana and driving to New Orleans is very slim to break
Yeah.
into, a property. And so that's kind of helped us too. It's just really being able to standardize things as much as possible because right now I'm very geographically spread out.
Okay. And how does your VA come into this? Where does she help you in these areas? Or
I
he?
would say she does everything. I would say a little bit of everything. I mean, from tenant management to Tuesday, um, someone's stove broke during Thanksgiving, and so yesterday, just because of the holidays and stuff, they just got a new one, and so like she was coordinating like delivery with the tenant, making sure that the tenant was there. I mean, it was through Airbnb, and so just because Airbnb, we just prefer to have all communication through Airbnb. So they called her, and she was communicating with the tenant. So like coordination of things. I'm actively buying, and there's anyone who's an MTR operator knows that there isn't much data on midterm rentals, especially like now I'm investing in a smaller town in Indiana where analytics just don't
Yeah.
exist. And so there's some like manual data entry and some manual things I track, like including just like the comp data, a
Mhm.
few comparable listings that I kind of track to see, hey, this is the most comparable listing. I watch them. Are they occupied? What are their rents at? Do I need to make my rent higher? Do I need to make my rent lower to kind of compete with those properties? So just a few like those manual entries she's doing as well. I mean, she's doing everything now from when we get a request from Furnish Finder, whether it's a call, we work directly. She does like handles like the business to business inquiries as well. And so like when they come in, she's answering the phone and kind of guiding them through the process.
Wow. And it sounds incredible. And how long did it take her to get to this point of doing all of this for you? How much training and then how many properties did you have when you realized, oh, I need a VA?
A year and a half. It's been a continuous process,
Okay.
continuous training. I think one, because I've continued to evolve. Like when I first started, I had a co-hosting business. And so that was part of like I had three VAs full
Mhm.
time because I was managing 30 properties. So I had that
Yeah.
volume. I would say I hired a VA at two properties. No, I had three properties because I was house hacking one. I had an arbitrage and I owned one. But I just know I don't like to work that hard. So I like to think smarter, not harder. And I was like, I didn't
Yes.
quit my job to have another job. I want to travel and like live my life. And so
Yeah.
it was really important for me. My first VA worked 10 hours a week, barely. Like he was between 8 to 10 hours a
Mhm.
week. And so he just did some manual data entry for me at $3 an hour. And then I've just kind of evolved and had different VAs from there.
Okay. And the systems and processes you put in place, have those helped with a VA?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Like I know we said we're going to talk about Monday a little later, but I think Monday or, insert any platform.
Yeah.
I'm a proponent of Monday, but Asana, Notion, a lot of them have the same capabilities, or even just Google Sheets or Excel if that's where you're at. Having a list of everything that needs to be done. Like there was like 20 different things I was doing in a week from like maybe saving down the mortgage statement once a month for all of my
Mhm.
properties or emailing the insurance broker if my insurance policy is coming up,
Mhm.
certain things like that. I really just started tracking that I was doing, and especially if I'm sending a template email where I'm just inserting the address, inserting the bedroom number, the bathroom number, inserting whatever details, right, I'm inserting, and it's tracked someplace else, my VA can do it. And
Yeah.
so I think having the systems and processes has really allowed her, like she negotiates my rental amounts. And the reason why is because in Monday we have a minimum. That's the minimum, the amount that I'll take for a rental. We have our current listing amount. which will vary based on some pricing data we do. And then we have our max amount. And so she knows to start at the max amount, but basically to, can go to the minimum amount for, and then we have notes on length of time. If they want a 12-month lease, we're much more likely to go to the minimum amount versus 1 month lease. We're going to need that max. And
Okay.
so I think just having as much track as possible and having data and training her on what it means, like what
Mhm.
those rental amounts mean. Like I get requests, a lot of B2B requests from ALE Solutions and different things like that. She understands that that's a business to business request, which is different than like a travel nurse on Furnish Finder, just in terms
Mhm.
of how we treat the request, the pricing, our flexibility, our
Yeah.
screening process, the urge and the need. Insurance requests, usually our lead time is 3 days. We get the request, they view it, we do the paperwork one day, they move in the next day. They're quick.
Wow.
So she knows, like, if I'm off and I'm at the spa or at happy hour, it's okay to bug me, for that, because we need to get that done. If not,
Yeah.
I'm out of commission. And so, just like that's really urgent. We need to get it done. Like she knows, like I give her overtime. So she knows if she saw something like that in the middle of the night, if our property is vacant, that she, would basically do it as soon as possible. So I just think as much information you can give them, the better.
Yeah. And you can do all these rental agreements in Monday?
So I just use Adobe PDF and like
Okay.
sign because it has a
Mhm.
signature. But I have all the details on the rental agreement in Monday, like the amounts, what's our pet policy, how much would each pet be, like
Mhm.
pet fee be, is it monthly, is it a one-time fee? All of that is tracked in Monday. I can't even keep track of it in my head anymore. So all of that is tracked in Monday. So like even for rental agreement, she just fills in all the data. If there's 5 pets, which we don't accept 5 pets, but if there was, she would know how much, just doing the math on the amounts, and then I just do a final view, and then I send it, for signature, and obviously I'm the one who signs.
Okay. Well, I mean, since we're talking about systems and processes, we can jump into Monday. So it sounds like Monday comes in with organizing and keeping track of all the documents. Can you talk a little bit more on what you use Monday for, and then what other apps you may use for different things as well to cover what Monday doesn't?
Sure. So I would say like I would start with like acquisition management is like what I use Monday for. So with acquisition management from like again, I get a deal from I have a handyman who sends me deals. I'm doing off market marketing, and I have realtors who send me deals, and I look on the MLS. So I have different ways I'm getting deals, and anything that I underwrite, even if I underwrite it and it's like, oh, I would lose $5,000 a month, right? So I'm not going to buy it. I like to track it in Monday because I'm like, one,
Mhm.
that's how I know. Like now, if I see a property that's 300,000 and it's a 3 bedroom, I know it's not going to work because I underwrote it 2 days. I underwrote a similar one 2 days ago, and again it was negative $5,000. So
That's right.
I realized for me that being a solo point, well, I have, in my VA, but just like having so many different areas of the business, I really had to think smarter instead of harder.
Mm-hmm.
And so thinking smarter instead of harder was tracking it to help me make decisions. And then I
Mm-hmm.
know, oh, that's a great price. I need to move on that one quickly. And then I can track trended data. And then I know like my pricing. And then like with raising private money, if I talk to a lender and they have X amount, I know exactly what I can buy with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like part of what I track in Monday. And then if it close, and then like my VA does some of the tracking on deals that maybe made offers on, we didn't get, and if it closed at a different amount, I just have it for my kind of comp purposes, as well.
Yeah.
So that's for acquisitions. For property management, everything from like market analytics, where my VA pulls data from our comps. We track like 3 to 5 comparable properties kind of per each of our properties, where literally she goes in and she clicks the listing for Furnish Finder and Airbnb. Is it occupied? What's the current monthly rent? um, just confirm bedrooms, bathrooms, what's the pet fee, what's the cleaning fee. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people's cleaning fee, if it's double ours, you better believe we're gonna double our fee, because and that can mean because usually a cleaning fee or something like that, if it's comparable, right? And even if our, rates are a little, different, like I think fees are one way you can kind of stay competitive in the area and, be able to make some extra income, if you can. So I just tracking everything that I think that we probably do as investors. And like we even have like our maintenance request track. So I have a form that I created in Monday, and a form like if anyone's ever used a Google, what is it called? Not a Google Doc, a Google form,
Yeah.
or I'm sure people have used Monday forms. They're really really popular. They're just like a form, and basically the maintenance request form says like what is the problem, what address are you at. They have is a drop down of the type of issue, and so based on the type, then they submit their data. First, I like was Monday. I use Monday CRM because it basically links to your email. And so they get an email that says, thank you for your, request. We're on it. If it's an emergency, we'll be in touch ASAP. And then it reminds them of our business hours. If it's not an emergency, if your toilet's stopped up and you have 3 toilets, suck it up.
Mhm.
It says it a lot nicer than that, but that's the gist. That's the gist of it.
Mhm.
And so they get that confirmation, and then based on like if it's anything that's water related, we're getting notified immediately, me or my VA, because no matter what, we need to know, what the issue is. Even if it ends up being, oh, they just clicked the wrong thing, water can really damage a property versus if it's, a kitchen appliance, we know that's not in a crazy emergency. We can wait until the next business day. If it's a 2 a.m. request, we can wait until we open at 9 a.m., right, to
Mhm.
view that and to address it. And so like I use Monday for that. On top of just like having all of the information on my properties, like when I talked about the rental
Mhm.
amounts, the square footage, the all the information on your properties that say live in your head, even where each bedroom is. Like I have a 4 bedroom and I have 2 king beds. Well, people want to know if the king bed is in the downstairs bedroom. So just tracking
Mhm.
that and like having links to videos and pictures and stuff for again me and my VA to be able to track like what's going on with the properties. And then I would say asset management, which I look at asset management as like is the portfolio doing? So again, I talked about I borrow private money.
Mhm.
And with private money, I want to know all of my debt outstanding because I don't just have residential mortgage debt. I have a commercial loan. I have a subject, a loan that's subject to. I have some seller financing. I have promissory notes from our lenders, and I have all this debt. And so I want to know one, it's like, what's the debt due this month? What's due in the next quarter?
Yeah.
What's getting, if I have 5 payoffs tomorrow, I need to know that because that would not be good. And so I can just kind of see it and I can be alerted of things coming up. I don't have any short term debt on properties, but the goal is that if I have a year, if I have like a hard money or even private money that was a shorter term, I can really keep track and alert myself of, okay, it's due in 3 months. I need to refinance now, pay it off now, or XYZ.
Yeah.
And so again, with 4 properties, I do have a good amount of debt and things, and I think it makes me. I like to think I'm my CPA and all my vendors like favorite client because if they're like, "Oh, what's your debt?" I'm like, "I have it right here. Download. Here you go." Because everything on Monday can be downloaded into Excel or a CSV, so
Yeah.
or a PDF and most other docs. So you can download it, send it over, and again, my VA tracks it. Like my mortgage, I have my mortgage balances. I don't track that. My VA has login access, saves my mortgage statements, and then pulls the same number.
Mhm.
Well, not the same number, right? It's going to change a little bit, but she knows where the number is in the doc because I trained her on it a year ago, and now she updates that every month, right? I don't have time to go into each mortgage statement, and I don't want to, honestly, go
Yeah.
into each mortgage statement. I just want to know how much debt do I have? Do I have, an opportunity to pay some off? Like what's my most expensive and things like that.
Mhm.
So there's so much Monday can do. And I think it's like I know like everything about my portfolio. And not because I'm doing it because like basically every week I review a certain part of Monday. And so that's
Mhm.
really helped me be hands off in terms of like the day to day. I'm really only involved when it comes to paying for large purchases.
Okay.
Like over, I give her like limit up to $250 where she can just use she has a virtual card she can use. And
Mhm.
so if there's like, we had like our mugs broke at a property, I don't need to be involved. You can buy some mugs, like what she bought were kind of, they like, not, they weren't the prettiest, but you get it. I don't, when I'm there, as long as there's coffee in it, does it really matter? No.
Yeah.
Right. And so things like that, it's just so much easier to just, to delegate. And so that's just like a cusp of like what Monday can do. I keep
Mhm.
learning, but yeah, I love it. And I think it's just great. I use some other things like for open phone. That's what I use for my phone system, right? Because Monday doesn't have a phone system.
Mhm.
But we log every conversation we have like in Monday. Like a tenant calls, talk to tenant on this date at this time about, stove issue, just so we
Yeah.
have a log again in Monday. Because the goal is that as my portfolio grows, and the goal is that if someone calls me tomorrow, which I hope they do, with a 30 unit and I can buy it the next day, right? The goal
Mhm.
is that I can add 30 units seamlessly because I have the operations to do so.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. That's a lot that money can do. Kind of going back to the acquisitions part, do you track like the properties that we're looking into? And I know you said if it doesn't work, now you know you don't have to go and look at that same property because you already know the numbers won't work. But do you follow what those properties will close on? That way you kind of know if you can offer an under like lower than what they are asking for.
Yes, and like sometimes I do offer just there's just like giving an amount, and then I'm started talking to some landlords in the area, and so I'll just kind of give a verbal offer like, hey, I would based on what you're telling me, I would offer 200, and they're like 200. Oh my God, that's crazy. I won't accept anything below 350, and I'm like, okay, he's not. There's no point in me writing it up because we're way off,
Yeah.
and so yes, that's one thing my VA does, and her monthly kind of task is go through
Mhm.
and just track, because then she tracks the status of like, is it pending, is it closed, is it still on the
Mhm.
market, because like there is something actually just went off the market. It was on the market for 150 days, and so like right now I'm in active acquisition mode where I'm just going to start making offers, and I started making just low ball offers, especially given the seasonality. And
Mhm.
so then like we have that track where like these are the ones I looked at. I already had an offer. This is, and she also tracks in my model. This is the number it would work for me at. And so
Mhm.
like I know it. And so I already did the work. I don't have, I have to readjust. Interest rates a little bit obviously will change, and
Yeah.
maybe the lender I work with. But I've done the work once. That's why I don't want to redo the same thing.
Yeah.
So I do the work once, and then I'm able to use Monday to kind of see what I've already done.
Yes, 100%. And I love Mitch said that empowerment of our team members is key to their development and our freedom to grow the company. 100%. And it sounds like
More
that's
definitely.
exactly what you've done with building up your VA over the past year and a half to be able to be this independent. Like hearing everything your VA does, I feel like that's not, I don't hear that a lot. Like normally it's like small things they take care of or specific areas, but it sounds like your VA, especially since you've got Monday.com and everything, just you've kind of like set your VA up for success through your systems and processes.
Yeah, no, I realized like my VA was on maternity leave and I was so lost. Like if she was on any other leave but maternity leave, I would have texted her like, please come back. Please. I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't. I didn't even know all the emails I got. I was like, who was emailing me? Like, what do they want? And no, I definitely can't do it without her. Like I gave her a raise like right when she came back from maternity leave. And it was 6%, guys. It was 25 cents. But like she was so happy and I was so happy. And my husband was like laughing, like he gave her 25 cents. But listen, but it's 6%. And she was so
Yeah.
happy and it, multiplied. And I always give her bonuses. That's what I really like to do, is like give bonuses because it's
Mhm.
less of a commitment right to your cash
Yeah.
flow because you're giving a set amount, but just when I can. And I build Monday boards for investors now. And so anytime she works on a new client and we close,
Mhm.
we celebrate and I give her a little, piece of like what we made. And so I really think like, finding and like investing in your employees is important. And that's part of the reason that I'm no longer in corporate America, is because I really didn't like the culture and like how
Mhm.
a lot of businesses invest or don't invest in their employees. And so I don't want to make the same mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the salary too, because Keisha's question is, how do you handle a VA salary for write-offs and taxes?
I don't know my bookkeeping.
That's a good
Oh
question. I
no,
good answer though. You got,
so
all right,
sorry.
Keisha, we need to get you a bookkeeper.
I do know that it's more of like an office expense versus like a what would be like in the US salary,
Yeah.
because if in a salary there'd be benefits and things like that. She's essentially getting a set amount.
Hmm.
Again, like she started at $4 an hour. All my VAs have started at $4 an hour, and then like her yearly promotion I gave her the 4.25 an hour. But I think for me, especially being a small business and wanting to, wanting to just kind of figure out what I want to do, and wanting to grow efficiently, having VAs has helped, even though it's more time to train them. But, having VAs has definitely helped, me kind of like plug people in. And then I actually just hired, like I have a separate bookkeeper and a separate CPA now. And like I'm so excited that like things are like I don't have to do anything with receipts and thinking about finances and like, you know, yeah, no, I hate saying that, right? Same thing with attorneys when they're like, "Oh, please, I'm not your attorney," but I'm like, listen, when I remember my tax refund and not thinking I was going to get as much, but my tax accountant knows much more than me, and I paid maybe $1,600, but our refund was a little over 20,000, and so I'm like, hey,
There you
when
go.
I learned that, I'm always going to pay tax people who are smarter than me,
Yeah.
and so
Pays for itself.
and they tell me what to do, because I know there's certain limitations or certain requirements if you're working with someone who's in the U.S. and who has a U.S. security number to get the W-9 and file
Mhm.
different things. But yeah, having a non-U.S. based overseas employee who's severely lower cost than a U.S. based employee, you're
Yeah.
kind of able to negate that.
I love that. And can you kind of give us an example of like when you, I guess, came across a time where it was tough that managing remotely and how you kind of worked through it?
Hmm. Sure. So I think, I'm trying to think of, okay. So my first move in actually did never happen. So I don't know. I don't like to bash platforms, but there's a platform called Hello Landing that they no longer, their rental model has changed. So I don't think you can list with them. But if you can, don't, because I listed with them and they require someone from their team to come out and to view the property, to view the neighborhood, to make sure that it meets their standards. And essentially, they didn't follow my checkout instructions, and they locked the tenant out. And so the tenant got to Philly at 11:30 p.m. Now I don't know if anyone's ever been to Philly, but I personally wouldn't want to get anywhere in Philly at 11:30 p.m. Philly is way too lively at night. And so the tenant called me, and it just basically is like, "Hey, we're locked out." I'm like freaking out, and so I wish in that moment I could have just went like, "Hey, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 10 minutes." I can't. I just have I live 3 hours away. And I sent a locksmith. Long story short, the tenant left. And it's funny, they didn't just leave my property, they just went back home to Tennessee. They left Philly. I think Philly was just too much for them. But
Oh,
it was, and luckily, because it was at fault of the platform covered some of that vacancy. But I think that was the biggest time. And so now, like, I like to think that I have things planned out. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen, right? Hopefully bad things don't happen, but sometimes they will. But I like just having things in place. Like I
yeah.
always have a 24-hour handyman or woman. That's usually different than my go-to person.
Mm.
But like I met this one guy, and he works at apartment buildings. Like, and he's like, "Oh, I'm available overnight to just do little maintenance." And
Oh,
he
wow.
basically is only available from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. But that's
So
great.
smart.
If
Yeah.
if an emergency happens, he lives like basically 10-15 minutes away from the property, and he can do pretty much anything or troubleshoot. If there's water, he can stop it. If there's a light burn, whatever happens, he
Yeah.
can at least take it to the next step where things are safe, assuming it's not too crazy of an emergency.
Yeah.
And so I think just for me having those vendors in place beforehand before I need them is important, and being in different markets as well. Like we have a huge vendor list, which is also on Monday. But so like I know when we had an issue with our stove before we knew we needed to replace it, we had an appliance repair company already on our vendor list. We had already vetted, we had already got a recommendation for, and stuff to my VA called. And it was, I remember they were $49 for a service call, not $249 that other companies were charging. Because my
Mhm.
VA already did the work to find a great vendor. And so I think it's just like doing the work beforehand has really helped to find the perfect vendors because I've seen in the past, one, like it can be expensive if you go with the wrong vendor. If I'm in a crunch and I have to go with the $500 person for my tenant to be safe, that's what I'm going to go with. Well, I don't want to go
Mhm.
with that person. So we do the work beforehand to find the vendor at the best cost, to track the cost again in Monday. We're
Mhm.
tracking that cost so we know like, okay, this person can't there in the middle of the night, but it's going to be expensive. Well, can it wait? Or do they have to go out and we have to just pay it? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things and I would say every reservation I make a mistake, like, a learning lesson or like I forgot to charge the ring in my last property, and I had to like go back and ask the cleaner to do it right before the tenant moved in. Because I'm like, why can't I see it? Oh, because it's not charged. Right. So there's there's so many things. There's so many like different things that like you can do. Yeah.
Yeah. And we do have a question. Someone asked, did you say costs $49 a month for maintenance?
Oh no, that was for for the appliance repair. Basically, to do a service call on appliances. We just paid $49, and usually it's like $249 for just similar companies. So we were just able to find the cheapest place. Basically, they come from a little farther, so it can't be an emergency. But with an appliance, right?
Hmm.
It's really not that much of an emergency. It's okay if it takes them an
Okay.
extra hour to get there.
Mhm. Okay. And how much do you vet these? Like, do you call and get like ask for references and stuff from them, or do you just kind of go based off trial and error?
Now I'm basically solely getting referrals. And so
Okay.
like now I have a pretty large investor network. And so I'm getting a
Mhm.
referral in some way or some form because everyone's, Google reviews can be great. You can get your friends to go and you can get your friends to do them. That's what, it's kind of good to, get some 5-star reviews. And so
Yeah.
I'd rather get someone says, hey, like I rather someone say, hey, listen, this handyman, he can do everything, but he's going to show up 30 minutes late.
Yeah.
All right. I've been 30 minutes late, like
Mhm.
there's people who are like that. So I know tell him the wrong time.
Mhm.
And so, but I'd rather get that referral and know, but he's going to do good work. He's going to so and so recommended me, so I'm gonna get good pricing. And I know like good vendors usually know good vendors. So sometimes I have referrals that I've just dated back to like, more and more, further and further, further and further back, right? Funny
Yeah.
enough. And so I would say recommendations. I would say though, like if I'm calling and I'm working with even like a recommendation, I just want to understand their cost. Like, what's their process? What's their
Mhm.
procedure? Are they typically working with, and I make it clear to them that I'm an out of state investor and I like a lot of companies and I prefer to work with vendors who are usually only working with out of state investors. Cause like there's certain vendors who like they know I'm out of state, so they're gonna do a little extra. Like I had my plumber went and like turned off all my lights. He's like, oh, so you said you're out of state. So I just went and checked all the bedrooms, even though it closed, and one of your lights were on. And so the plumber didn't have to do that.
Oh,
Maybe he was just being
wow.
nosy, but he turned it off. He turned it off so he can be nosy. But little things like that, I just like to let them know. Like I like to know, hey, I'm buying more properties here. I'd love to use your services on my next property.
Yeah.
Like to talk them up a little bit and like, oh, well, how much we charge for this and this. One, to get some quotes, but then also to let them know like you're gonna be my go-to plumber. Even though if I end up dropping them, they're not gonna know it while we're on the phone. But like I think it's really important to like hop on the phone, and that's one thing that I always do and don't delegate to my VAs.
Mhm.
The first time I connect with the vendor, I do it myself, and then I say, hey, I have a VA. She's from the Philippines, who does most of my vendor communication. Just know, and we have an office phone, so it's the same number, but I just let them know that she'll do most of my stuff. Because sometimes it's like if they realize it's something big, they're like, hey, I need to talk to Jamie. And I appreciate that. Like if it's going to be a $2,000 job, yes, you need to talk to me. I
Yeah.
don't want her making that decision, right? And or sometimes it's better, they know to talk to me versus telling her to tell me. It's just better. Like we have raccoons in our attic, and so like it was just easier to get on the phone to understand the damage they can do, to understand the risks, to talk about how I want to humanely let them go, whatever, versus like my vendor telling my VA and then telling me.
Okay. So, I mean, as you've acquired properties and you've built up these systems and processes and your Monday.com and your team and you trained your VA throughout this whole process, and now kind of looking back, what do you feel like is the number one mistake that newer investors make when trying to, when they're just first starting in this process?
Hmm. I would say not being connected enough with other real estate investors. Like
Mhm.
I know, like right now, I just moved to Austin, Texas, and if a new investor reached out and said, "Hey, I need you to look at a property for me," I would do it. And I'm not, I don't want people to just flood me with requests, but I'm not trying to make a buck out of someone. I would do it because I know it's just like sometimes you just want someone to drive by and make sure your
Yeah.
tenants aren't on the stoop doing things they shouldn't do. And so I would say not being connected because like it's so lonely out
Hmm.
here to like just being an investor. People think you're crazy. People still think I'm crazy, like in my personal community. They're like, okay, well she's doing well and crazy, but just you quit your high paying job to do what? So, it's just being connected with other investors who are
Mhm.
in your community is especially important because they can give you recommendations. They can tell you you're not in a good location, you're not in a
Yeah.
good area. And I think too, like especially if you're even like raising private money, I've seen local investors sometimes are the first ones who want to work with you because they're like, hey, I know your area. I love that area. I've been telling people going far back to invest in that area. If you invest there, I'm willing to work with you in some way somehow. So
Hmm.
I think that's definitely one thing new investors and any investor should do.
That's such good, like that's such good advice because like from networking and from meeting other investors, that's how also you get your referrals. Like, it's what you said before too. So it all just feeds off of just relationships. It all goes back to relationships, I feel like.
Right.
It will definitely change your
Exactly.
business and your life. So put yourself out there. So are you gonna start a meetup in Austin, Texas? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
I hate meetups, honestly. But I know I hate starting meetups. I like to
Yeah.
attend events.
Okay.
But we can never say never. I thought about doing a meetup next time I'm in Indiana, like when I'm there locally, doing a meetup with some local
Mm-hmm.
investors to meet people. But you never, like, I'll never say never. I have started like looking at some of the meetups in this area though. So, because I really want to, even though I don't plan to invest here yet, I still want
Mm-hmm.
to learn some,
Building those
even some local.
relationships though.
Yeah, and someone might change my mind.
Yep,
My
exactly. You
mind
never
gets changed
know.
very easily.
And then as we wrap up here, I do have a few more questions I want to make sure we got to. For one, how do you stay up with local market trends and rules when managing your rentals from these different areas?
That's a great question. So we do continuous like audits of our portfolio. So one is like an annual review where we're doing like every aspect that needs to be done, like a full underwrite, we're doing it again. Well, I'll say we, but it's mostly me. My VA pulls some of the data, and I'm doing it. So, and
Mhm.
part of that is regulation. So, typically, a regulation when it comes, it's going to come. It's not. It might come out of nowhere. I don't know. It might not. It might come out of nowhere, but it's been in the works. And so, if we see it in the works, we know something like is going to happen. So that's something I do a search on at least once a year. I also, one thing my VA tracks on a monthly basis is the percentage of properties that are MTRs only, essentially the number of properties that are rented for 30 days
That's smart.
plus in any given market. That's usually how we know. If there's a regulation, we'll see it there.
Okay.
I'm in three, no, actually, every market I'm in has regulations. Some of them are very lax. Hey, you have to get a short term rental permit.
Hmm.
It's $50, and that's the only regulation. But some are more you more strict. And so like we already, have those in place and and know those, but that's something at least annually that I review. And again, like knowing like and doing so much research on each property is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually able to easily kind of pick those out. Because again, if something changes, if 10 new properties jump into the market and are only MTRs, well, most people honestly prefer to do STR, especially in like, I'm in like a smaller Indiana market. If it's suddenly all these properties became MTR overnight, I would know. Another thing is I've made friends with the city planning department, and that's like one of my I hope it's not like a claim to fame in this town. There isn't a lot of, I would say, black women who look like me, or probably black women at all, to be honest, who are going into this small town. I always go in. There's only three of them in there, and I introduce myself and I talk with them and make the connection. And so doing that has, like, again, they would tell me now, like, I ask questions and I try to message them at least every other week. And so I'm getting a lot of insight. So that's another thing, is just having a contact who lets you know. So
Yeah.
we don't, or at least we don't have to, always seek it out, do the research, because sometimes it can be buried
Mhm.
in HOA docs and other documents that are very, very difficult to understand.
Yeah, that's so smart. Again, back to relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's incredible. And is there any, I guess, red flags that would pop up in that information? Like if you did start to see an influx of midterm rentals in your area, is if it got to a certain point, would you leave the area, sell your property, or is it more just an information, like gathering information at this
I
point?
would stop buying there, which is actually why I'm in four different markets, and three I won't buy in, because like Philly, I bought my property January 18th, January 31st. There became a regulation where essentially overnight on around the 31st, the
Mm-hmm.
number of midterm rentals in Philly went from 10% of all furnished rentals, so like 10% of properties on Airbnb, to 30%. And so
Whoa.
that's between from 1 in 10 to 1 in 3 now
Yeah.
properties is a midterm rental. My property has been rented for this whole year, and knock on wood, it's rented till March. It's an insurance claim. It's doing great. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm at the point where I need to sell it
Yeah.
yet. But when I learned that, I was like, okay, I'm not going to buy in
Mm-hmm.
Philly for the midterm rental strategy. And kind of similar with even the property I just left, that was my primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
There's heavy regulations there. Now, actually, those regulations helped me, because I actually got that property rented in 3 days, which is my fastest.
Well,
And it would have been rented sooner, but I had to get out of it, which was the hardest. Which is, well, can I move in tomorrow? I'm like, no, you actually can't, because I'm here with all of my stuff in my closet, so I can't get out. But because basically the regulation is short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are defined as properties that are rented under 30 days, but in order to rent under 90 days, you can only rent out 180 days total, which essentially means um, if you're renting midterm under 90 days, so under
Mhm.
3 months, you can only rent your property out half of the time a year. Well, who can buy a property and only rent it half of the time?
Right.
Now, it's different if you, like, Northern Virginia is not a place for snowbirds. It's not a place for seasonal travel. It's not like it's going to be crazy in the summer and lower in the winter. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a market where you can do that. But I happen to own the property, and I lived in it until we found a tenant. And then my HOA requires 3 months anyway. And so my minimum is 3 months. And
Okay.
again, I got so much interest in the few days it was listed, and this was for a December move
Mm-hmm.
in. I know I'm not going to have a problem in the spring. But again, I wouldn't buy there because I know the struggles and the regulations.
Right.
And so I think that's important. Like, I haven't honed in on one
Mm-hmm.
market. Some of it is shiny object syndrome too, to be honest. But I've honed in on one strategy, and so because I'm, dedicated to midterm rental strategy, if I see that signal, I'll stop buying there.
Okay. That's good to know. And is that what the major red flag that you look at, or are there any other red flags that you're kind of watching out for with all this data coming to you?
I would say that's mainly
Okay.
the red flag that shows the trigger.
Mhm.
I mean, cash flow, like performance of the current ones. So I have one that makes $1,000. I mean, I have one property that makes $100 a month. I
Okay.
have one property that makes almost $3,000 a month. And
Okay.
so I'd like to get rid of that $100 a month one. Now, it's also in New Orleans, and I get to go to Mardi Gras for free next year. So that's my
Ooh,
pain
that
rate.
doesn't
It's not
sound.
$100 a month. I'd much rather more $3,000 a month ones, right? And
Yeah.
so that is also a big thing for me. Even though I'm raising private money and using all these different methods,
Hmm.
I have a cash flow amount because I do this because I want to make money, right?
Yeah.
There's other things as well, but at the end of the day, I do want to make money. So that's a big indicator. Well, like the $100 a month ones in New Orleans, I'm not buying in New Orleans because the regulations and also the prices. Our insurance went up 250%.
Hmm.
Our taxes went up 50%. And so we have no cash flow, essentially.
Yeah.
There isn't much we can do. And that's at the creatively at the low interest rate. And so we definitely can't buy anything there at today's interest rates
Hmm.
and not dump a whole lot of money into it. So I'm saying look at different things, but I think so I'll look at it, well, just like kind of the general occupancy for the market, and like I want to know if my comps are rented. If my comps are on the market, I don't want to keep buying there or at
Hmm.
that comp. So for all, there's literally only it's two other comps in the market for the latest property I bought. There's only two other 4-bedroom furnished properties in the city, and they're
Hmm.
not even midterm rentals, but they're just 4 bedrooms. But the great thing is they're always rented for at least one day for the week because they're short-term rentals, but they don't have any availability for midterm rental reservations. So for
Hmm.
basically, I'm the only 4-bedroom plus property in this market that's available for midterm stays. So
Hmm.
I don't think I can charge what I want, but I'm going to keep going up and up because
Yeah.
there isn't another availability because everyone else has short-term rentals, and so their calendar doesn't have the availability
Hmm.
for midterm stays because they're already booked for Valentine's Day. They're already booked for the Indy 500s in
Hmm.
May, and so they don't have that availability. So I
Yeah.
look at a lot of different things to
Okay.
kind of make that decision.
And so how do you know, how do you, like, where do you go to look or find this out, like that a lot of your comps are already booked?
So when we first identify the comps, so I identify the comps, and then my VA does the tracking month after month after month.
Hmm.
And so we just include, I get the Airbnb and the Furnish Finder link. And so we look, like on Airbnb, you can look, if you actually go to their listing and
Hmm.
don't have like dates, they'll just take you to their listing. You can see, is it available X date? Is it, not available X date? So you can just kind of see that in real time. And the same thing with Furnish Finder. Furnish Finder tells you if it's available or not.
Hmm.
Furnish Finder, you can kind of you don't always know if it's as accurate because it doesn't link to something, but we know we're that's part of the reason we're doing it over time because it's not necessarily is it rented, we don't necessarily care if it's rented, every day or not, but is it over time? Is it mostly rented? Is it not
Yeah.
mostly rented? That's what we want to know.
Hmm.
So my VA goes, and that's again why my VA does it, not me, because she goes directly to the listing, basically sees our processes to see if it's available for the next within the next 30 days is kind of our metric for that. So that's
Hmm.
one thing of fact. And again, like for me, my high level view is how is it over time? If like for Indiana, I track the analytics. We track the analytics for about 4 or 5 months before buying there.
Wow.
And so like the comparable properties were not available for rent midterm at
Hmm.
all between I think I started tracking in April and May to now it's December. They haven't been available. I don't have a full year data, but I feel pretty good about that they're not going to have availability, and I can keep buying 4 bedrooms there because my property, in the slowest season, went from listed to rented in 3 weeks. And so, like, I know that's a positive indicator. Now, if the properties were sitting vacant, as in my property, even
Hmm.
if it was rented, I was seeing the negative direction. Okay, maybe I need to buy a different size property. Maybe I need to lower my rental rates.
Hmm.
They're too aggressive. Whatever. So I just use it to kind of show me data. So I spend a lot of time in studying the market because I think with midterms,
Hmm.
there really is like a minimum, there's a floor and there's a max, but there's that floor, that max could be $3,000 apart.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to lose $3,000, right? So I want to basically know exactly where I can live so I
Yeah.
can get someone, but I can get enough demand. Like I know for my property, my primary, I listed it too low, which I listed it at $4,797,
Hmm.
and I got someone in 3 days. So you better believe next time it's going to be listed for a lot more than
Wow.
that. Because I thought I didn't think I was going to get anyone at that so soon. I was like, okay, let me try. Let's see what happens. But I got someone right away, so I know that I can. And people budget was 7,500, so my budget, my rental amount is going to be a lot higher
Uh-huh.
um, than that. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, and I wish there was just a way you could go. Maybe I'll develop a platform. That's what I want to do on Monday, to have the dashboards and I build out for myself and my client where I have it, where I know my data for my market. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You really have to be specific to your property, because
Hmm.
me and you, Miranda, could operate in the same city, but if you have room rentals and I have a 5 bedroom whole house, our comps are completely different. So even if
Yeah.
we're looking at the same data, it would, it might not apply to both of us.
Yeah. 100%. And Tia asked, how do you find other midterm rentals in our area so we can compare with our competitors?
So it's going to take a while. So first, always go to Furnish Finder,
Hmm.
because Furnish Finder is a midterm rental site. There's another site where I actually met like the CEO and the founder of it, and I really liked the site. It's called Mini Stays. So that's and they're only midterm rentals. So you can also go to that site. So basically, we go to sites where we can find other midterm rentals. On Airbnb, what you'll have to do is go to, I'm just going to use Indianapolis as an example. I would go to Airbnb and I would search Indianapolis, and I would search, there's something, it's called flexible.
Oh,
Basically,
yeah.
you can say I want to stay for a month or 2 months or 3 months, but I don't put in, the dates.
Hmm.
That's how I kind of see who's a midterm rental or see who has availability.
Hmm.
Because basically I'm saying, hey, I want to stay for a month between now and the end of June. Does anyone have availability? Well, in my market, I saw no one has availability. Well, that's great. So then, I mean, I'm in a small town where there's literally only 7 properties that are between 3 and 5 bedrooms. So
Hmm.
I can track all my comps because there's 7 of them. I'm in Philly, I cannot track all my comps.
Yeah.
We don't even try. But then you can just search the property. You can search like in Indianapolis. You can put the number of bedrooms and bathrooms that your property has to find the closest ones, and then you save those links. You save it to your bookmark, your dashboard, however you want to do it,
Hmm.
and then you start studying those properties and make sure it's actual comp. Like I have a property, like my property in Philly has a yard. My comp has to have a yard because that yard, it's not in the best location, but that yard has gotten me a lot of money because I'm the only property with the yard in like 7, 8 blocks. And
Wow.
so if someone wants to be in this neighborhood for midterm, I'm the only property with a yard.
Yeah.
And so I'm comparing to maybe slightly better properties,
Hmm.
but they have a yard versus something that's, cheaper and doesn't have a yard. That's not going to be my true comp. So, but once
Hmm.
you identify those comps, then you once a month, once a week, once, like if I'm vacant and if I'm vacant for 3 weeks, I'm looking at that, me and my VA, sometimes daily. Okay, what's going on here? Have they booked this other property? Is that why they didn't book ours? Is there no demand? We're doing, this a lot more frequent. But that's primarily how we're going. Oh, and last is Zillow. You can go to Zillow, search again, let's say Indianapolis, search wherever you're investing. And then there's a way you can do, like, you can do an additional search within that search, and you can put in furnished. So then you can see properties that are furnished, and you'll see some other midterm rental operators who have listed there. So I like to just do a combination of all of those
Hmm.
different ones.
And track it in Monday.
Yep, exactly.
Good question, Tia. And also, I know you mentioned one of your properties is an insurance claim, or it's through an insurance company. So how do you build these relationships with these insurance companies, like remotely?
Great question. One, I would say most of them are remote as well. Or if they're not remote and they work in an office, they're handling like large portfolios across multiple state lines. I would say just persistence and being and having some type of consistency. Like for me, my consistency is a monthly email. Kind of like a newsletter, kind of just an email blast.
Hmm.
Like I don't have any vacancy right now, so I
Hmm.
can't say I have this property available because I don't have anything available till March. So I don't have, I'm not going to send something that says, hey, I have these properties available because I don't have anything available. And they don't care about March, but it'll just say, hey, this is how many people radiate real estate house this year. Or maybe
Hmm.
it'll say, hey, this, hey, that. Well, I'll figure it out in the next few weeks. But I like to just be consistent. And another thing is like I I believe in giving fast feedback. So I used to do tenant placement. And a lot of people will do tenant placement where they'll get a lead and they'll find a house for it and collect the difference. I've done that. I've collected not the difference, but a fee or an amount. It's great, but that's a whole different line of business. And I realized that I can't, unless I hire employees to do that, I don't have the capacity. And so now I just let them know, hey, I don't have anything. I'll let you know when I do. And they know if they message me, I'm getting back to them via email within an hour, and they're going to know. And usually it's 15 minutes, honestly. I usually get back to them as
Mhm.
soon as I see it. Hey, I don't have anything. And or they know because like again, my lead time is average lead time is 3 days. So they know if I get something, we're gonna get that person in as soon as possible. Last time we had to get someone in, it came on the 21st and we had to get them in before Christmas. So we got them on the 24th. So they didn't have who wants to be in the motel for Christmas and they had kids. So like that's an example of like they know we're gonna work hard to get them in as soon as
Mhm.
possible. Where when you're, going through other processes or maybe don't have the best operations, it's gonna look a lot different. How fast you're able to move. So I just think in being, consistent, I would say, some of it is luck. Some of it is in Philadelphia, there's a lot of homes that are older and that malfunction. And when those homes catch on fire, flood, the adjacent homes in that row, because Philly is mostly row homes,
Mhm.
are also going to be damaged. So there's just more claims in a smaller city. So I think part of that has been, being in in locations that have a lot of claims.
Mhm.
And then there's also being, consistent. But also, it's also right place, right time because we don't really know when those types of claims are going to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess too, because I know there are some insurance companies who won't go, consider you an option if you don't have a certain amount of rentals under your belt. Do you partner with other investors and other mid-term rental operators in your area? Or have you found that to be a problem or no?
I haven't because I would say for me, I've always established like a steady stream of leads myself.
Okay.
And like I am very honest about the size of my portfolio. And like I go after like if I have one property, I'm going after a smaller business who might have this one-off need. Or
Mhm.
they're national and they might just have, they have leads in my area. Where like I'm buying more in Indiana and because I plan to go after more larger companies. As there are a lot of construction, I want to be able to house 5 or 6 or 7 construction crews. So
Mhm.
and I'm building up more inventory there. And so I really feel like it's been like, I haven't, I love working with other investors, but I haven't had the need to work with other investors because I've pretty consistently stayed fulfilled with my own marketing efforts. And I think like being a full-time operator, if a property is vacant, I'm marketing it daily in some way, somehow. In a Facebook group, maybe we're redoing our listing or changing things around. And so things end up like we get more traction. I'm not going to say we're always going to get a lead or a booking the next day, but we're getting a lot more traction just by, now I kind of know the triggers to pull
Mhm.
to get more traction.
Okay. And one last question here I just want to ask. What has been the most cost-effective change you've made in your business since starting?
I would have to say hiring a VA,
Yeah.
which spending more money to make more money. Because I would just say like, if you write down everything you do in a day, there are some things you do that you just do not like. Like I do not like posting. Like it's not the creation, it's the actual posting.
Yeah.
It's like Instagram keeps changing, it pisses me off. I don't know where things are. I'll leave the post. I'll leave it. I'm not like
Yeah.
my VA was on maternity leave. We didn't get no post. I was like, I can't post. I can't. But she can,
Mhm.
and she's fine with doing it at $4, and she's doing it at 4.25 an hour. So,
Mhm.
um, things like that or data collection. And I would say like I realized for me, I work really, really, really hard to do the things that I'm good at. And so I needed to leave capacity and leave opportunity in myself and give myself grace for the things I wasn't good at. And
Mhm.
especially things that like my VA can learn how to, post.
Yeah.
Or I hate being on the phone. And so like she'll even call customer service for a lot of our property management related issues because I do not want to call. Like I do not want to call. I hate doing it. And so I think just like being able to hire and being able to really
Mhm.
utilize my time and knowing how much I'm worth per hour and being able to use that to maximize
Yeah,
things.
100%.
Chris, I see your message, Christina. Yes, you do need to hire a VA to help you post. It's just
Yes.
something about post. It's like you do all this and now I gotta post it. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's something about the posting.
Gotta get you a VA, Christina. Well, all of this has been so amazing. You have literally dropped so many golden nuggets here on the systems and processes. Everyone, you should know exactly where you need to start right now if you're planning on managing midterm rentals remotely. And I'm sure if you want to learn more, reach out to Jamie. She's amazing. And also, I believe, Jamie, are you now helping people set up their Monday.com accounts? Is that right?
Yeah, so yeah, I have a few different clients now and I'm currently accepting more. So if you really like what I'm like and you're intrigued by what Monday can do, definitely reach out and we can schedule just a demo session and I can show you a little bit more of like what Monday can do and how it can help in your business. Because I think it's just definitely helped me be more organized. And whether you have two properties or 2,000, I think we all want to be, systemized and ready for whatever opportunity presents itself. So it's good to have your systems and your processes in place.
That's incredible. I mean, guys, she's giving you a shortcut here. You could try to go figure it out yourself, and I'm sure you could do it, but it's going to be more time costly. So if you have a W-2 like me, definitely reach out to Jamie. And like if you're like short on time, like Jamie will help you set up your entire Monday.com account. So that is, I love that that's even a thing. That I love that that you take an initiative and that you're like, okay, I've set mine up. Now I'm going to help other people set theirs up. And you've just continuously, like, you're just a giver. Ever since I met you, you've always been a giver. So thank you so much for coming on here and just sharing with us all of this amazing, incredible information and continuously putting yourself out there to give back to everything you have learned and then back to investors as well. So you're incredible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I hope I get to see you again in person soon.
Yes, absolutely. All right. If anybody has any more questions, we are wrapping up. I guess, okay, really quick, last question. Tia asks, if you have one property, do they still need Monday.com?
I would say yeah, because then when you have your next one, you know exactly what you need. You
Yeah.
know your insurance information. I would say like I'm actually small plug. I'm working on templates that I'll be selling by I'll say early next year where they're going to be more plug and play. So like maybe you wouldn't invest thousands of dollars for me to build it out for you, but you could just invest in having templates where you could put all in one property. Won't take too long for the information,
Mhm.
and then as you grow at least you have a good basis.
Yeah.
Oh, then I saw Christina's question. I've only used onlinejobs.ph for to hire my VAs and referrals. So good luck finding your VA.
Good luck, Christina. And again, thank you so much, Jamie. If you guys want to reach out to her, you can find her on Instagram at Jamie Banks Real Estate. Go ahead and DM her, and I know she will respond because you're amazing.
Thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you,
so much
guys.
fun. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye.